Twitter begins removing legacy blue check marks. So it appears, Dr. Yoon, that what's going on at Twitter is on 420. Ha ha ha. Some people say that Elon has the humor of a child, and it's something I relate to. So on 420, he decides that the old blue checks are going away, and the only blue checks that are going to be there are people who pay. And this has caused a tremendous amount of upset. What say you, Eddie Yoon?
Well, it seems like there's a near-term consideration and a longer-term consideration. If I start with the longer-term one, I think we've always said on category design that the fundamental flaw with social media is if you're not paying for it, then you are the product. Point, period, end of story. So that's when people get mad about Facebook, data privacy and selling my data to who knows what and whatever else, and all of that kind of stuff, that is a function of Facebook being free. And when you don't pay for something, there's no free lunch, so they're going to monetize it through advertising. And so in the long scheme of things, this is what Elon is doing, is saying, yep, I don't want my users. I think what he said is the vision for Twitter is to maximize the most amount of unregretted minutes spent on Twitter. And so if you want to do that, then you have to not be the product. And for that to happen, you have to pay. So where I think it's the right direction to make sure that the incentives are aligned so that you as the user are not monetized through an advertising model, but that you as a consumer paying for something, now their incentives are to make you happy, to protect your privacy, to give you new Scooby snacks, add value add. So the net of it, the long-term direction is the right thing to do. In the medium term, they probably need to do a good, better, best pricing on this, because $8 a month is not something that everyone can afford, nor does everyone want to pay for. But if you said, I'll make up a number, for 80 cents a month, you're not going to sell my data to advertisers. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
it's a hedge there. And then in the near term, it's going to be a big, kerfuffle, because you're going to get a lot of noise from a small number of people who are pissed that they got their legacy stuff taken away. I saw that Elon is paying for the $8 a month specifically for Stephen King, LeBron James, and there's someone else I forgot. I don't know what he's doing with that, but
Stephen King apparently was pretty mad about this. I mean, really.
Yeah. Fuck. No, I mean
But the other benefit to me as a user, Eddie, is one of the things I've hated about Twitter is if you're not dealing with somebody who clearly looks like a person, you don't know who you're dealing with. And now we know that we're dealing with a person that's been verified. So I like that. And frankly, my desire to engage with you on Twitter, if you're not a verified user, has pretty much dropped to zero, because I don't know whether you're a Russian bot or a 12-year-old moron, or I have no idea who you are. But if you're clearly a person who's been verified, and I understand the verification process is not that extensive, but it's at least a hurdle to get over.
Right.
The other thing, more importantly than getting rid of Christy Teigen, isn't it interesting what's going on? There's a corollary, and I guarantee you Elon's watching it. And the corollary is OpenAI ChatGPT has more paying customers after 4 months of availability than Google has had after 2 decades. And our friend and mentor and coach, Joe Pine, says, you have a valued experience when people pay for it. And he talks about, I forget the name of this bookstore, but there's a bookstore in Tokyo where people charge to go into the bookstore because the experience of being there in of itself is worth paying for. And so if I'm synthesizing my Joe Pine teachings, the ultimate harbinger of whether or not you're delivering a real valuable experience is, will people pay for it?
100% agree. And I think it's the experience is, you just nailed it. That's the key part of it, because I will find as a user who is paying for the $8 a month, it's just easier to not have to do threads, because I would always screw that up. I just like being able to write what I want to write on it. Long form, that's super simple. So easier as a creator. And as you said, when you incentivize creators, because it makes it easier for them to create, makes it easier for them to interact with people who aren't bots, as you said, then the total value of the ecosystem goes up. And this is less about the blue check mark, because I don't think that that'll ultimately matter. It is so they probably need to find a different way of explaining the benefit, because I think they have lost the thread that it's not about the blue check coming in or out. That's not it. It is exactly what you said: user experience, improving fraud, improving the content on it, and creating the right incentives. And so this to me is a languaging opportunity and a lightning strike that they probably missed, because they positioned it as something that they were taking away versus positioning it as something that they were giving to.
100% agree, Eddie. And you know, the other thing that's fascinating about this is it's part of a bigger trend, right? So those of us who've been around for a while, we remember the early days of MP3s, and we remember Napster. And starting at that point, for the better part of 20 years, people said, nobody's going to pay for content on the internet. Nobody's going to pay for content on the internet. You know, what started to happen over the last 10 years, and particularly accelerate over the last 5? Well, Spotify and Pandora have proven that people will pay for music. They won't pay what they used to pay for vinyl records, but they will pay something, right? What is OpenAI proving today? Well, you know what? You wouldn't pay for search, but $20 a month for answer is a pretty damn good deal, right? So many of us are paying for OpenAI, and that shift. And you look at the growth in newsletters and Substack. You look at the growth in subscription media companies in the tech world, like The Information and Stratechery, and there's many others. And so, what's my point? My point is, over the last decade or so, there's been an increase in the acceleration of the number of digital services that people are clearly now willing to pay for.
Totally. And we're just getting started. And so this to me it was a languaging lightning strike opportunity that was missed. You got to explain the value in the near, mid, and long term. And then exactly what you said, now it is getting the good, better, best correct. Like, all of this is about figuring out the right price at which some people will pay, and more people will pay, and even more people will pay. Because what is very clear is that people quickly forget the old system was not working. When everything was free and you were the product and you were being monetized into, very detrimental effect. And so, humans are kind of prisoners of the moment. You just got to remind them of where we're going and where we came from, and that put the present in that context, and then everything should be good to go.
And so the reality is, he is pioneering a new category, which is he's the first at scale paid, user paid social network. And that's the category he's designing. Of course, it's clear he wants to add a lot of things to it. He's going to move to commerce. People forget that he's the PayPal founder. And so money is where the money is. And so it'll be very interesting to see what he does there. It's very interesting what's happening with Spaces. I see a scenario where popular Twitter Spaces are more popular than CNBC for Business News, for example.
That's just going to get worse as cable network goes like this, and digital audiences go like that. So,
well, Mr. Beast has over 100 million subscribers, and CNN's daily Nielsen primetime numbers are 500,000. If Mr. Beast had 5x CNN's numbers, he would think he'd just fallen off a cliff.
Right.
And so, listen, if longer term, so A, paid social network, new thing. B, adding a commerce piece. C, adding this Spaces piece, where essentially you can create a digital media network like that on top of Twitter's audience. And I'm sure many other things he's planning. Look, and I know people are mad at him. They don't like what he did to NPR, and they don't like his silliness. We look at this sign here. He took the W in Twitter and made it look like it go away. So it's called Titter. Look, he's doing some very silly things, but that to the side, he's doing some very smart things. And listen, this is the other thing. What do you expect legendary, giant, exponential risk-taking category designers to look like? They're not going to be wearing pleated khaki pants from the Gap and button-down blue shirts and look like a McKinsey consultant. They are going to be kind of nuts. And I'm not saying I agree with everything he's doing. I'm not even making excuses for him. All I'm saying is paid social network with a commerce capability, with a whole new media category paradigm emerging? It's too early to say, but this is starting to get very interesting.
One is, I think I just looked it up. Instagram made $660 million in a day copying Twitter by launching their own paid, whatever, verified program. So, categories beget categories, as we always say. And remember from our last part 3 of the marketing book of marketing that drives market cap, what do we say? There's nothing more than people love than a stunt or a fight. And that's what Elon is doing. He's like, he's not going to take it away. An amazing stunt that drew a ton of attention. And he's picking fights with everybody and their mother and this and that. And, I don't know that I've ever seen anyone quantify the value of the earned media he has generated for this to advertise. But, he is secretly one of the great marketers of our time.
Absolutely. He knows how to drive digital WOM like nobody else on the planet.